Welcome to the next podcast from Millinery.Info. I'm your host, Lauren Ritchie. Thank you so much for joining me today for this episode of Millinery.Info, where we welcome milliners from across the globe into your ears and studio. Today's episode is with Nicholette Pottier, the winner of the 2023 MIMC competition. MIMC, also known as the Melbourne International Millinery Competition, is hosted by Catherine Ellen of The Essential Hat. Millinery.Info was a sponsor for this competition, and we hope you enjoyed the conversation with the winner. Thank you to our wonderful podcast sponsors for their support of this series: Louise McDonald Milliner, The Hat Magazine, Judith M. Millinery Supply House, Hats by Lico, Be Unique Millinery, Lifted Millinery, Hat Blocks Australia, Hat Academy, Millinery Australia, Hatters Millinery Supplies, and House of Adorn. You can find a link to each of these businesses in our show notes. That's the section in the podcast app that you're listening through, or we also have them on our website. Have you been enjoying this podcast series? A way to say thank you and to help us to continue to bring you these fantastic episodes is to become a Patreon of Millinery.Info. There are 3 different tiers available, and the first one is as little as a coffee each month when you listen to a new episode. Head on over to patreon.com/Millinery.Info to sign up. We thank you for your ongoing support of this series for those who already have. I hope you enjoyed this episode with Nicholette. Thank you so much for joining me for today's podcast, and congratulations on, well, you're wearing the beautiful hat, but your beautiful MIMC award-winning hat.
Yeah. Thank you so much for having me. It's an absolute thrill. A little bit shocked to be speaking with you, but yeah, thank you.
Well, we're honoured to have you. And let's start with this beautiful hat. This is the MIMC 2023. And the theme was Make Jean's Hat.
Yeah.
Which, did you have an idea about Jean Shrimpton and that phenomenon before the competition?
No, not really. I love the outfit and I love the scandal. So I thought that's just kind of me anyway. I kind of tried to push the boundaries with any kind of creative thing I'm doing, especially with millinery. I tend to go on the more sculptural side anyway. It just seems to be a natural process for me. So no, I didn't. The way that it came about with the fabric, with this soft it's like soft bridal tulle, but it's got the flocked velvet polka dots of different sizes. And I actually found that at a Salvation Army store. I found a roll of it and I was absolutely shocked when I saw it. I was actually out on a jog and I passed it and I thought, oh, let me just go in and see, because I often look for old hats that maybe are really good quality straw, but they're, looking a bit tired, and try to refurbish them. And I came across this roll of fabric and I was like, oh my God, I wonder how much it is. And I asked and it was $15. And I'm like, okay, sold. I had no bag, no nothing. My phone, I was like I say, I was out for a jog. So I'm carrying this roll of fabric on my shoulder down Parramatta Road towards Newtown. Seriously, people must have thought, what's going on here? Um, and oh, it was such a great buy, and I was so excited by it because it has this lovely vintage to it, and I love that vintage kind of aesthetic. So yeah, I was very, very happy.
Was it something that you had found in time for the competition, or it's something you just happened to, it just happened to match up the theme and the material?
No, it happened to match up. I bought it. It was actually sort of not quite just after like the last lockdown, and so I had it, and I actually had it hidden away because I don't have much space at home, so I had to kind of hide it because I was going to get in trouble from my partner, and I knew there were many things I was going to do with it. As soon as I saw Jean's outfit and that brooch in the middle and with the sort of what looked like a spot to me, and I thought, oh, that's perfect. I'm gonna give that a go. So yeah, and it's funny because the other items, the frame for the piece, I found at an op shop in Newtown, and I think it was what I thought was a lampshade, and I'm not sure because I've seen it once, but again, and it may have been a fruit bowl instead, but I love the shape anyway, and to me, it screamed Dior brim. So I'm like, okay, well, I'm going to do something with this. And the braid was also something that was donated. I was doing Millinery Cert 3 at Ultimo Tafe, and Connie had some braid in the back room, and she said, just have a look at that. I was looking at playing around with braid for one of my pieces, and some of it was a bit worse for wear, but I thought, let me just take some and it'll come in handy and I'll play around with it and see what I can do. So that was left over from that where I didn't end up using it. And so everything in this piece was just, yeah, it was amazing the way it came together. So I was really happy.
Wow. And did you, so it was a finalist first off, and then it got modelled at Flemington Racecourse, which was a pretty cool experience because for those who maybe haven't heard the Jean story, Jean Shrimpton turned up to the Melbourne Cup and hat on, which was the controversy.
Yeah.
So to see this come back, and Catherine Ellen had arranged for some replicas of the dress to be made as well.
Yeah,
So it was very cool to see them add
it
on add
was.
on show.
Yeah, and the hat looks so beautiful, and the model was so lovely. And even on the day of the announcement, I actually had 5 minutes to like have a little late lunch. It was my youngest daughter's birthday, and she'd had like this 3-day thing happening, and I was exhausted. And I finally sat down in the courtyard to have some lunch, and then I turned it on and was sort of watching, and noticed that she was actually wearing one of my other pieces that I had entered in the awards ceremony in the awards. And yeah, that was really exciting. And I thought, oh, maybe I'm in with something with that one. So that was, yeah, it was a crazy surprise.
And so you made it a second piece as well. What was
Yeah,
because with MIMC, Catherine does have it set up so you can enter multiple entries. What was
yeah.
your other piece?
So it was called Guggenheim. I have it behind me. It's I was playing around with cinema, and I, c- I love architectural shapes, and I'm inspired by architecture in a lot of my work. And I was playing around with the black cinema, just folding and doing like pleating, and it started to remind me of the Guggenheim Museum in New York. In something about it, yeah, I just kind of kept playing. It was a real organic kind of play around, even with the way there's an opening at the back and sort of at the top. It's sort of a natural kind of a knot that happened. I was surprised to see that one then. I thought, oh well.
The polka dots are out.
Yes, oh well, it's all right. Even my partner said, better luck next time. You did great anyway.
Well, they're both beautiful pieces, but the winning one, of course, must hold a special place for you as well.
Thank you. Thanks. It was actually it was really time consuming, as most, works where you're entering a competition. I think you're pushed to challenge yourself, and to try and make it, do the best that you possibly can. So there was a lot of binding of the tulle and folding and shaping the wire and trying to get that around the edges of uh, the braid right, and then finally getting the fabric. Thank goodness it had a beautiful stretch to it. So trying to get that lined up so that it didn't look like there was a seam or a join anywhere. And finally, at the end, I played around with the wiring on the inside, and because I use flexi wire, I was able to kind of shape it so that it had this prism kind of effect. And when I saw that, I knew exactly what the neck was. And it just, yeah, it just organically happened. So I was really happy at the end. But I have to say, when I was working on it, it was a really rough time. I'd COVID for the second time, and it was around the same time that the family had it the year before. And so it was kind of a really tough time that we were going through, kind of week or two. So this was my salvation, my
Oh,
my
how beautiful.
escape from, the kind of doldrums of, that intensity of being in this locked place again. So it was really, yeah, it was such a lovely experience. So it was, yeah, like I said, I was so thrilled to win it, and it really had a lot of meaning for me because of that as well.
Beautiful. And were they techniques that you had used before, or were you diving into some new area?
A lot of it, the binding, I think that's like a natural thing with binding wire and stuff like that, which I really enjoy that. But the shaping of the braid, I hadn't really used braid before, and getting that lovely shape around that sort of geometric shapes. And you start off and it's like, oh my God, look how much I've got to do. And that was only the
What have I
braid.
set myself up for?
Exactly. And yet we do it to ourselves again and again. And I wouldn't have it any other way, I think, because you don't have that learning experience otherwise. You just have to dive in. Yeah. So some of it, was just learning, teaching myself something new, and some things it's learnt through some of the courses I've done.
So you mentioned there about the courses that you've done. Let's jump back to the beginning of your millinery story. How did you first come to millinery?
So uh, about a million years ago, when I finished high school, I was out working, just trying to earn some money and be independent, and I came across this course, actually at a local TAFE, where I lived, in the area I lived, and I signed up for it, but there were only a couple of us that ended up enrolling, and so they cancelled the course at the campus and they moved it to Randwick TAFE, which is across the road from Randwick Racecourse, which was kind of a weird kind of thing happening there. And so I decided, yeah, I'm still going to do it. And it's like an hour on the train, 30 minutes on a bus just to get there. And it was 2 nights a week. So, it was quite full on to kind of get there. But at the time I was working in the city anyway. And so that made it a bit easier. And actually, it was a bit of an exciting thing for me. I was, 20, just finding my way in the world. And it was exciting to go to a totally different area. I come from the southwest of Sydney. And so to go to the eastern suburbs was totally new for me. And yeah, met some really lovely people. And I'd actually done a fashion technology course at Randwick TAFE the year before.
Wonderful.
And so I had a few basic skills on, sewing and pattern making and things like that. And I just felt like when I finished that course, millinery was a bit more specialised, and I love the idea of learning more about all the different types of hats, whether it's, for the races or for, formal occasions or for work purposes. I mean, look at, policemen and so many different types of hats that are traditionally worn for work. So, not that I ever went down that path. It was more just to learn more about, the different types of
Curiosity.
hats. Yeah.
Fantastic. And where did that take you from there once you finished that course? Is it something that you continued to do, or were you continuing to work in your other roles as well?
Actually, it didn't sort of, that year was, I did this amazing piece for the TAFE show at the end of year, which was a really sculptural piece. And it was like a cap, but a huge, sort of half a meter high wire structure. And it was in the style of Mondrian, those colors, the primary colors, the blocked squares with the black in between, and then um, and this peak that was stuck right out, and it tapered down sort of from quite huge round at the top and tapered down to the crown. And I had to wear that in the fashion show. And it was like, okay, this is so heavy, but also, trying to walk without it falling, and also keeping it on my head still. And so that was kind of a highlight, and I really enjoyed it. But after that year, some family issues happened. A couple of things happened, and kind of had to sort of forget the creative side. And actually, even after the study, I don't think I was confident enough to pursue the creative, like the millinery, even with the fashion technology. So I kind of let it go, and let it go for a really long time, focusing on, trying to get a real job, and because I didn't really think I could make money
Your job
from it.
first.
Yeah. And so I did. I went on this path for many, many years, and, um, you know, a few years back, about 5, 6 years ago, after I'd had two young girls and had the time, was a stay-at-home mum, and had the time to actually think about, okay, what am I going to do now when I go back to work? And I knew I wasn't going back to work in accounts and do finance kind of work. And it was my chance to kind of start studying again. And I'd always did paintings or drawings and things like that. I was always creative, in my own way, in my own home kind of thing. But I
Mm.
kind of thought, okay, it's time to pick this up and pursue something that I enjoy and see if I have something there. So I did a visual arts course online. My little
Yes.
step into it, doing it online, is not having to be in the classroom with. I was terrified of all these young students, and actually, it's not terrifying at all. A friend of mine encouraged me to then go and study on campus. So I
Yes.
went to Design Centre Enmore, and
Yes.
I'd been studying design fundamentals, which is sort of design industry kind of courses, everything from photography, graphics, illustration, props, millinery, and that's where the millinery came back in.
Yes.
So I was studying with Penny Gervaise, who is a fantastic teacher. And so I've been doing many millinery courses, short courses with Penny, and a few other women have been doing the same and kind of reliving their, starting up their own businesses and reliving something they maybe wanted to do and didn't sort of have the courage. And then Penny kind of pushed me in the direction of the Cert 3 at Ultimo, the Cert 3
Yes.
millinery. So I completed that last year. And this year I've been working with Penny again. We're entering a wearable art competition that Enmore Tafe is holding for the first time this year. And so we've done the wearable art 1 and 2 for headwear. And so I'm working on a piece for that, which is still a work in progress because you've got to kind of bring it for wearable art. If you've
Yes.
ever seen anything with the WOW in New Zealand,
Oh, it's
World of Wearable
incredible.
Art, it's so amazing. And every time I overthink everything, but I've done prototypes of things and I've spent hours and hours on prototype of a headpiece to work out how to use different fabrics and whether it'll work for what I want to achieve for my actual piece.
Yes.
So it's that path of just testing yourself and pushing the boundaries and trying to see what materials will do and what I can do with them. And yeah, just really throwing myself in, I guess. Yeah.
What a wonderful mentor in Penny that she supported you and who showed you the opportunities in that pathway. That's so exciting.
Yeah. Yeah. It was amazing. Actually, the first piece I did within the design fundamentals course was a piece that was for Mardi Gras, and the theme was sort of Day of the Dead. So it was
Yes.
part props, part costumey kind of shaping, and and a bit of wire work. So all that millinery sort of came in, and some beautiful feather flowers and things like that. So yeah, and once I'd done that with her, I was like, oh my God, I remember this. I love this. I've got to revisit this. So it's actually been a really, really amazing few years, especially at Enmore TAFE, because I've done so many courses there and kind of feel like it's a bit of a home at the moment. So it's really good.
Wonderful. And how did you find coming back to it from when you were studying straight out of, I guess, high school to coming back to it a few years later?
That's a great question because a world of difference. Looking back at my young self, I had no confidence. I didn't push myself. I could have really gotten into it straight away and been this milliner for how many years. And but I think that's the way individuals are. We sometimes it's meant for another time. So as a mature age student, it's been really amazing. And I was really thankful to this friend, Emma, who sort of pushed me and she said, you've got to go and study at campus. It'll be a great experience and you'll meet people. And I was so worried about this younger generation and how they're going to cope with me and how I'm going to cope with them and the technology and all of those things. But actually, um, I met the most amazing people and we became like a family and I was like the mum to them. and so many from so many different backgrounds and types of ways of living, and with different kind of attitudes and everything. So I learned so much from them, and I was able to give them some of, my experience, wealth of my experience. Um, and yeah, it's actually led me on a bit of a different journey. I think my millinery or my creativity is going to come into something else. I'm an empath, so I I I'm I feel my way through and chat and love a chat with people, and always find that I'm giving advice where there are some issues or problems and things like that. So I don't know, there's something there that's still evolving, but it's really been a great journey. So I'm really enjoying it at the moment.
So exciting, and what an exciting space and time to be doing it as well.
Yeah, I think it's what's great about it is like everyone's come back from COVID. I mean, before it happened, I started that journey, the study journey again before COVID, and then after it, and seeing how it's affected people is really amazing. And and it's not just one or two or the ones that are prone to it who may have mental health issues. It's everybody,
Yeah.
Um, and being creative is such a lovely way to have relief from those pressures. It's yeah. So I would encourage anyone to take up any kind of creative to process. Doesn't matter what you think it is, or yeah, it can be very rewarding, and it's been great for me anyway.
It's fantastic. And you're sitting in a beautiful studio space.
Yeah.
Can you tell us about your space? How did you come to be here?
So considered the resident milliner, if you will.
Wow.
I
I
don't
like
think I
that
consider,
title.
yeah. I work for an art studio who produce large inflatable art projects and lanterns, collaborative works. So work with communities, do workshops and create art. And then that art becomes the print for some of these large pieces, inflatables, anything from sculptures to the sea to all sorts of inflatables for different communities and different galleries and yeah, lots of Mardi Gras, all sorts of different companies and institutions and so I've been working here for a couple of years, and I help to facilitate the studio and the materials and get everything sort of where it needs to be for the people who are constructing the pieces, machinist and the artists, and facilitating all of those things and helping to put pieces together. I sort of do the bump ins and bump outs sometimes when we're setting up installations, and so it's a varied role, and it's a lovely kind of a lovely thing to be a part of, and and I would kept talking about how I've got no space to do my creative work. And Matt said to me the one day, he said, "Well, you know what? I've got an idea." And he changed. Some things were changing, and he set up this studio upstairs. And so it's a creative space for anyone to come in. He's actually looking at hiring it out for people. There's a couple of machines, an overlocker, all industrial, and lots of tools here for creatives, for people who do sewing, make their own whatever it is, whether it's bags or headwear or costumes or. So I have this little section behind me where I have a curtained off area where I have loads of materials, blocks. At the moment, boxes of all of my hats, which I've been slowly trying to get photographed. And it's giving me the chance to work on a beautiful bench in a space that is creative already. And I'm working on towards setting up a website. And I've got that many hats that I've made through all of these courses. I need to start hiring out some of the sculptural ones for, maybe editorial work, but also for sale. So, he's kind of been helping me to push me into, I think, what I need to be doing. And, you know, but like I said, I've got two young girls, and, I'm a mum first and foremost, and there's a lot with bringing up kids and having a household. And so while I work here as well, I'm doing the courses that I do and entering competitions as well, which is another thing that's been amazing to challenge myself. as I'm sure everyone knows. I mean, your piece was amazing in the ruffled. I was having a look at
Thank
that
you.
beautiful fabric.
How have
Yeah.
you found having a creative space
Oh,
out of the home? Has that changed how you make?
oh, it definitely has. Absolutely. I am a little worried that I might start collecting too much more because
Welcome to being a
I feel
milliner.
like, yes, because and actually my partner said that. He said, now, when you move there and you've moved everything, just be careful because don't get comfortable and just keep collecting things because you'll find Matt's going to kick you out if you have too much more. And he's probably right. I've got to hone myself in. It's not that I go spending lots of money. I'm always looking at op shops and things like that. And I just find these amazing things that could be used and I can't let it go. If anybody does millinery knows that, you save every little bit because it could be part of a trim or something. Yeah.
If
But
it's
it's been amazing.
masterpiece.
The creative part of it is straight away the first week, oh, it was like heaven, having a creative space, having a big table where everything can be spread out, and it's just a game changer. So yeah, I remember how hard it was having a certain amount of time before school finished and then having to pack up everything and then pick up from school and drop off at activities and then maybe pick up again my activities and take everything out again at night when everyone's gone to bed, and not having to do that anymore is crazy. It's so beautiful because that flow of creativity is allowed to just, happen now. Yeah, and I couldn't thank Matt enough for giving me this opportunity. So I'm making the most of it. I'll tell you that much. Yeah.
Very exciting. And what
Yeah.
have you been working on recently?
Um, Besides the wearable art piece, there's been a fair bit happening there. I'm actually working on a collection for Spring Racing Carnival. I
Exciting.
approached Catherine Campbell from Hats Off Headwear last year. I saw this thing come up on Instagram, and I'm not a social media person. I'm only on Instagram, and it's only for the millinery, for this process, this creative process. And I saw this like sort of a thing, her site come up, and I thought, you know what? If I don't just question and dive in, I'm never going to do it. So I just inquired about putting some hats in her store, and she was like, yeah. Absolutely. How many? And, when can you have them ready? And so I sent some down, and one piece sold just before Melbourne Cup, which I was absolutely thrilled by. And that was my first little, dive into actually selling something for Spring Racing Carnival. So it was kind of a stepping stone for me. So when I was in Melbourne recently, I contacted her and didn't get a chance to see her. Schedules clashed, but she asked again if I'd like to send some hats down for Spring Racing Carnival. So I'm working on some pieces at the moment, playing around with different shades of cinema and working on a little collection. The one bit of advice you gave me was watch your brim size. Because I don't have my own packaging yet. Actually, I don't even have a label yet, Lauren. It's all a
Sounds
work
like
in
that might need to be
progress.
on the to-do list.
Yeah, it's all a work in progress, believe me. And so she said, just watch your brim size because the brim that actually sold, she didn't have a bag or a box big enough for it. And I was really happy it sold. So obviously there was interest, but it was like, okay, I really have to look into that, be aware of all these sorts of things. And then I started to panic a little bit. So as I say, a work in progress. I'm trying not to get overwhelmed by it all, but you know, it's yeah, it'll happen.
It's an exciting time though to be in
It
that
is.
space and to
Yeah.
be figuring that out.
Yeah, it
Yeah.
is. It really is. Especially coming from Sydney. I think I'm not really in the whole racing kind of thing, but I seeing all those sculptural. I'm a real sculptural kind of person when it comes to millinery too. But everything that is so beautiful, and how to make something that is different, that is authentically you, but that someone else will enjoy and have, yeah, and sort of, I said it before, but thinking outside the box, making something using techniques that are different or fabrics that are different. And I just don't see why you can't push it, um, and can find that you can get amazing results from pushing the boundaries and yeah, and putting yourself out there. So yeah.
Okay. When you're working on your pieces, how does that process work? Do you sketch? Are you playing off the materials? How does your creative flow work?
So I did coming up to it, I was thinking about it and I was watching some of the shows for Australian Fashion Week that were at Carriage Works not far from here. And I was looking at some of the colours coming through and then thinking about spring racing in Melbourne and thinking about actually foundations that I'm comfortable with, then that makes it kind of a bit easier. But then just elevating and thinking outside the box as far as trims and things like that. And so sometimes I start with a little bit of sketching, but I love Pinterest. I love uh, getting onto Pinterest and getting ideas for different types of shapes. And I was able to actually borrow a couple of blocks from Penny at Tafe, um, which is always handy. And so I thought, you know what, I'm going to get some bunch of different of these colors of cinema. And so I've been blocking and working with different layers of, so to get that kind of a shot kind of look. And so I'm just playing around there with the cinema and the color scheme for the moment. And then I start to extend on with illustrations and see what other people are doing as well, but conscious of not doing the same and trying to, show some of my own creative side there. Put something that I'm still figuring out what my style is too. Like I love the vintage, but I love like pops of color and things that are really bright and lovely that help to, lift a mood. So yeah, and working in an art studio where there is usually a lot of color, it's hard not to be kind of influenced as well. So yeah, but I love geometric shapes as well. One of the headpieces I did for Hatimba, it was actually for part of a costume I made, a Madame Butterfly costume for TAFE. It was a short course I did at Ultimo, and I just went out there with experimenting with different fabrics, layering to make different types of flowers, different shapes. And I actually made these origami little flowers. And then for the headpiece, I thought, I'm going to give this a go. So I made this origami piece, like a cherry blossom, very large on the head. Again, heavy, not very practical. But again, yeah, the origami and that kind of texture, those kinds of shapes really interest me. So, and I keep coming back to triangles and that kind of thing. So somehow, for some reason, it's sticking with me. So I'm actually playing around with that again. So looking at doing something with trims, and but the process is never the same. I think it's something will scream at me for some reason. And I get a lot of my inspiration just even walking. Sometimes if I feel I'm blocked, is walking the streets. Like if I go on one of my morning walks and just looking at architecture and looking at different, whether it's the buildings or different shapes within, or even just beautiful trees. And I think there's inspiration all around us, and I take from everything. So yeah.
Fantastic approach.
Yeah.
Well, it's
Well,
been very
it's
lovely.
all there. It's all there for us. So, use what there's so much beauty around us all. We all interpret it in different ways. So, yeah.
Absolutely. And are you taking on any other competition challenges in the future?
Well, the I did have to forego September this year, and Penny was actually very relieved because she was a bit worried about me with this headpiece for the wearable art competition. Um, And so she was, I kind of try to do a little bit of everything. And it's like, I need a little break to actually work on this and achieve the best result for it. But actually, I need to really focus on getting a website set up and figuring out my label and all those sorts of things, and really just get my little business going and see how that pans out. Yeah.
That's so
But
exciting. Well,
that's
congratulations on your beautiful MIMC piece. It's been wonderful to chat with you and hear about that piece and the beginning of
Thank you
your
so
millinery
much.
story.
Thank you so much, Lauren. It's been an absolute pleasure to meet you.
We hope you enjoyed that episode. Congratulations to all the entrants of MIMC, and we look forward to seeing your future competition entries. Thank you to our ongoing podcast sponsors for their support of this series: Hat Academy, Millinery Australia, Hatters Millinery Supplies, House of Adorn, Judith M. Millinery Supply House, Hats by Lico, Be Unique Millinery, Lifted Millinery, Hatblocks Australia, Louise McDonald Milliner, and the Hat Magazine. Like always, you can find a link to these wonderful businesses in your show notes. That's in your podcast app, whether it be Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or SoundCloud, or through our website. Head on over to our website to also see some other images that were spoken about in today's episode. You can also find out more information about how to sign up to become a Patreon of Millinery.Info. I'm your host, Lauren Ritchie. Thank you so much for joining me for this episode, and I look forward to talking hats with you again soon.